Hi, namaste सबैजनालाई मेरो नाम त्रिकुटी राई. I am the co-founder of Boju Bajai, and
My name is Atisha Giri. I'm the co-creator of Boju Bajai, and welcome to All Ears, our online podcast festival, which has been created to bring together Nepali podcasters, international podcasters, our podcast listening communities in Nepal and abroad.
So आजको हाम्रो यो आजको अन्तिम सेसन for day 1 मा we have Lorina.
Namaste. Welcome to Aji's Podcast. मेरो नाम Lorina हो. म Aji's को co-founder हुँ.
बोजू बजैमा बाजे बोजूको बारेमा स्टोरीहरू भन्ने लोरिना जीलाई स्वागत छ. Welcome Lorina.
Thank you, Brikuti. Hi. Hi, Tisha, and hi, everyone.
So, first of all, Lorina, I think your podcast is so different and so unique in what it offers to your listeners and your community of listeners. Like, do you want to just tell us about your podcast first and how you came about it? Like, what was the first episode like? You know?
Yeah, of course. So, Aji's it's very special and I would say like one of its kind Kalgo podcast where we interview elders, 60 and above, and most of them are in their 70s, 80s, and even 90s. We've interviewed people across Nepal, and we interview them in Nepali, English, and Nepal Bhasa. And so the idea is we document their very rich, in a way, unique life stories that our generation has never seen, experienced. So it's basically to be able to document their legacy, their experience in their own words, so that the next generation or us, we could learn from them, seek some inspiration, and at the same time, it's for them to be able to share their experiences in a way that we see it as a valuable, intangible heritage, culture, and history that's all attached to their experiences. Because we have about 30 plus podcasts, men, women from different ethnicity, different background. For example, we recently had a 90-year-old Hadurama who talks about getting married at the age of 13 during the end of World War II. And the first podcast was with my grandfather, because I grew up listening to his story of traveling to Lhasa to be able to do his business.
Yeah, I always tell Brikuti, because I'm married to a Spanish guy, so I'm based in Madrid right now. I'm in Kathmandu, but I'm always very envious about how old people in Spain have such a rich social life, so they're sort of always out, in the squares, in the plazas, and they're out until midnight partying away, like in their own ways, but they have a very rich social, like, communal life, and maybe I might be generalizing here, but I don't see that as much in Kathmandu, or I can only speak of Kathmandu because that's where I live. Like, mostly like old people kind of like live inside their homes, and they spend most of their time the confines of their home or their gardens or whatever it is.
That is very true. And in addition to just the podcast, we do a lot of campaigning for elders as well, because elders are in terms of health, in terms of provisions, and all these things that we have a platform where we talk about issues around elders. I mean, you're very right, because Nepal, I think there are many factors, including how the infrastructure, how the policies are not very elder friendly. It's very difficult with all the potholes and transportation and everything. So it is very difficult for elders to be more as independent as they would like to be. But that doesn't mean they don't want to, and they have so many skills, there's so many experiences that they want to share. So that's how Aji's also started. in a way to help, in a way to empower elders to be able to do what they love doing in terms of making crafts, in terms of making things that they like, or share their poetry through our blog. Or
Can you also tell a little bit about the social enterprise and how that also sort of like like brings together elderlies and sort of like helps them lead a more like fulfilling life, like a more dignified way of spending what the society terms as unproductive, as like retired age, where you're not like an active contributing member to the society. So can you also tell our listeners also about that?
Yes, I love talking about that. So, Aji say was born because I saw my own grandmother, how she loves knitting. I grew up watching her knit socks and clothes and stuff for us, her other grandchildren, her children. But it would all be only for the family. But then one day I realized like it gives her so much joy to be able to put that much effort in a product, but it's not as much valued in the sense like I wanted the world to experience, see, and value her skills. So that's how I said like, okay, let's start selling the socks that you make. And that's how it started. And then we opened up the platform to other elders because I realized, okay, there must be so many other bojubajais, like bajais in Kathmandu, who, like you said, aren't able to do much, but they must have skills because like back then, imagine not much of the products were in the market, like machine made by Sikathian. It's all hand skills. It sounds very different to us because in our generation, everything is readily available in the market. We just like buy it. So we have such limited hands, like skills, compared to them. So for them, they had to make, it was like a DIY kind of generation. So that's how it started. So all the elders that we work with, makers, we call them, elder makers, male, female. So they make different products like knitting, crocheting, jewelry, sculptures, like all the skills that they have been mastering over so many years. It's not like today they learn your skill and they started selling. No, they've been doing it for so many years. So we're just giving them a platform to be able to showcase it and for the world to enjoy, experience, and value that. Aji's podcast came a little bit later, in the sense that we realized there's so many elders who don't necessarily have to know how to make products like that's marketable, but they have another very, very powerful tool, which is their experiences and their wisdom. So the lived experiences that our generation will only be able to listen to, like this. So we thought, okay, this we need to really document. So that's how we started. Pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, we used to do it in studio. We used to hire a space in a different studio and then do the studio. And because we thought we want the elders to feel special, because all these elders are not celebrities. For them, it's their first interview of their life, and it's their first experience. They think like, oh, you want to interview me? Like the stones, like, what, do I have a story? And of course they're like, and they're so excited to be interviewed or be able to speak about their experiences to the world. And so we thought we have to make this, number one, special for them, and number two, also for the audio quality. So we did it in the studio. Many of them, almost all of them, would just come all them ready by it. It's like, it's a very big event. So it felt so special. And there was like Aji, she wanted to change the date because it wasn't enough time for her to shower or get ready, because for elders it's just stepping out of the house or getting ready for these events is not as regular as it is for us, Nita. So it was really special. So we changed the time and date because we really wanted her to be very comfortable, to in her best. So it was really special to see how valued they felt, or how special, it was all about them. So it's just really, it was gustuman ananda.
That sounds like quite something, to be able to give that kind of joy through the podcast. Aji means grandmother.
Yes.
Yeah.
It means grandmother.
Yeah. So anyway, so going back to my question about sort of like talking to podcasters about how they build a community around the podcast. Obviously, Aji's the enterprise is separate from Aji's podcast, but sort of like came about because of doing one thing that led to another sort of. So in a lot of these podcasts, the podcasts that we've been talking about, we've including Boju, we've been able to create this online community of listeners who engage with us on social media. But for you, because the people like how have you been able to create a community of listeners, and who are they? Because obviously the elderlies that you interviewed, they probably are not as active on social media, probably don't have social media. So who is it that you engage with as part of the community that Aji's podcast has been able to build?
So, like you rightly said, with podcasts like Aji's, we have very niche listeners, Panona, who understand the value and the cause behind it, and the importance of listening to these stories and that this history, culture, and stuff. So we have a very strong listener base, and who write to us, and it feels a sense of like validation, as well as, oh, we're on the right path, Vanessa. So when we get these messages saying, oh, I love this podcast about you and it really inspired me about this, like we have those. And to answer your question, yes, most elders in Nepal are not as active on social media. Some are. So we interact with their kids and grandkids. So Aji's podcast, one of the objectives among three is to bring the generations together. So we work with the kids or grandkids who come to us saying like, before when we started, we used to seek out for who can we interview one, but now it's like people write to us saying, oh, can we have my parents or grandparents on the podcast because they have so and so stories on it. So they write to us and I interact with them, and we sit together, we sort of like talk together. There's a form that people can fill in terms of what their story is. And before getting to the elder, I work with their kids and grandkids to extract the story, because it's like so many kids, grandkids don't know the story of their own grandparents or their parents, So it's also like an opportunity for them to sit with their grandparents and extract some highlights that I could then elaborate on, So, and many of them have said that it has been such a pleasure, like ekdam unique, special moment over dinner or over days where they dig deeper into the lives of their parents and grandparents, which also brings up a lot of emotions on how they were unable to understand them better. So it's like a very special bonding between them. And this pochi, then it comes to us, because in a way, the closest people are their own families who are able to extract their stories. And then me as an outsider, then I look and analyze in perspective, and then talk about those highlights that they want to talk about on the podcast. Having said that, people who are listening, if you also want your parents, grandparents to be, or anybody, elders who you think could be a guest on our podcast, you can write to us, or my website, we have become Aji's podcast guest on your web link where you can sign up, elders, and we reach out to you.
Wow. So like, Miro dad's side ko grandmother pani ke, she also got married when she was 13. Like, can you imagine? I mean, अहिले सोच्दाखेरि हुन्छ नि 13 वर्षमा बिहा भयो.
Exactly. It's all these each and every stories are so unique, extraordinary, inspiring, because few time the experiences were different. Like, for example, right now we talk about entrepreneurship so much. We have so many different entrepreneurs across the world. We have some episodes where we talk about entrepreneurs who started the real like entrepreneurship back then, when there was no infrastructure, no technology, nothing, And in our, I think it's a second podcast, or there are few elder entrepreneurs, and exactly, he started audio business in Nepal, audio studio in Nepal, when there was no audio, visual, anything of that sort before. And he talks about how he set up the stage and all for Jawaharlal Nehru when he came to Nepal for his speech and stuff. So all these history special moments are captured in each of the episodes, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, I mean, तिम्रो लागि चाहिँ अहिलेसम्म, because you're on 33 episodes भनेको है, and the next episode's coming out this week. तिम्रो लागि, for you personally, what has been like the most special episode that you worked on?
Please don't ask me this. Each and every episode is so special. And it's I'm just looking at like each episode brings so much emotion in me too. Because like when I interview them, and we also have I also have other co-host, Sunita Dongo, who is unable to be here today, and she's interviewed a few guests, and each episode is so special. Like we just interviewed a cancer survivor, Rajani Ji, and we have like even people who are well known, like Ambika Shrestha Ji and Madan Krishna Ji, Anuradha Koirala Ji, but also like I want to touch on this one, late Srimati Bajacharya, because after we interviewed her, after I think 2 weeks, she passed on, she died. So we released her episode after she died. Okay, it was sort of like a very special memoir for her family, and she was a very powerful woman in the sense she was a principal of one of the popular schools in Nepal for over 25 years. Back then, where female principals were very few or none. So when I remember interviewing her. She was on her bed, very sick, in the last stage, but her family really wanted to capture her special life story. She was still so powerful, so inspiring, and it was just really to be able to release that story even after she was gone was something, was very special.
Yeah, I think, the kind of work that you're doing in the podcast does really, and we talked about this earlier also, the way it sort of like documents these lives, which otherwise would have just been like, like forgotten, the stories, होइन एक किसिमको यो oral history project जस्तै भएर पनि गएको छ नि त, like let's say like for the family, not just for the family, but for like you said, for younger generation to, when they think of a certain time period, sort of like adds a face to it, makes you feel more connected to the past in many ways. So I think your podcast is doing a great job of that.
Service नै भन्नु पर्ला नि.
Yeah, ho. Ani अर्को चाहिँ something that again we've asked, and we did talk about it earlier also, was about the sort of also सबैजना podcasters हामीले कुरा गरेको चाहिँ नेपालको very independently. We are not attached to large organizations. Distribution ko लागि we rely solely on the whatever free distribution platforms there are online, and we don't have like hundreds and thousands of following either. So त्यो सबै हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ, can you just explain a little bit about how you said you and Sunita, who runs the podcast with you, how do you guys do it? And also maybe if you could touch on the financial aspect of it a little bit, because Aji does have a Patreon page. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So when I started the podcast, something, it was very kind of new to me also. Boju Bajai is one of the first ones. And like very few like podcasts, radio was like more popular. Radio show ho. So to be honest, ma pani podcast sunnina thiye ki paila, like podcast, I listened to these conversations, but I didn't know the word like as we use it now. So my the idea of podcast actually came after when my husband, because he lived in US and he listens to a lot of podcasts, and he suggested, why don't you do a podcast? Like, how do you do a podcast? What is a podcast? So I had no idea, like, how do you even start a podcast? Okay? And then he sent me like a bunch of different podcasts. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Yeah, And it's like basically one woman that I used to interview, I edit. And the first time I didn't know how to edit also. And then I learned how to edit. So it's like, it was a gradual process. And in the beginning, it took hours to edit. So not like days even now, but it's faster and stuff. So it all started just afne like investment, like not a lot, but still like not associated with any big organizations or distributors, like you said. So we did have small sponsors here and there, no? But so now it's mostly patrons who have been so supportive. So patrons are mostly people who have been supporting Aji's as a enterprise. At the same time, many people who we don't know, who just listen to the podcast, and it feels like when we see Naya patron who signed up for this money, oh my God, we don't know this person. Like organically, we have this money. In every new organic patron makes you feel like, oh, what you're doing is good, Vanessa. Like it gives you a sense of wow, like it's not just the amount of or anything, but just the patron, the followers. So with that, like if someone is listening and would like to support us, our patron page is Patreon, patreon.com/Ajis, AJIS. And it's like people support us with $1, $2, 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, like even more, depending on how much they want to support. And it's not about it's about being able to support. And it's just for many people, like $1, like ek rupiya per month is nothing for us, but when it comes to supporting causes and like work like Aji's, it means a lot because it just adds up, and it also gives you the moral support as well as the financial support that you need. So I would say we're just using the Patreon page, which is not a lot, but still it helps us. No?
Yeah.
So that's how we're doing. Ani, it's not easy in the sense when you have to do it all by yourself, interview the clear stuff, but it takes a lot of time, dedication, and also when you interview elders, it's a different process than interviewing or talking to younger people. So it's a like there's a lot of sensitivity that's attached. There's a lot of things that you may have to consider in the sense it goes longer than you plan.
Yeah.
So for COVID, it was difficult because the elders are one of the most vulnerable groups, COVID. So we had to completely stop the studio course. So then we started doing over social distance, and now we do it over Zoom, which has worked well. Virtually but now it's working very well. So these things that you need to pay extra attention to when working with elders.
Elderly, they're also like without filter, just like like my grandparents used to be like that too. I know that also your voices are not as present as, so really when you listen to an episode of your podcast, like you really feel like your central character, the central even narrator or the host is the character herself or himself.
Yeah.
Do you have any like memories or anecdotes of like elders playing dirty together?
Like in every episode, so like you rightly said, I ask a lot of questions in between and probe them depending on the notes that I have and all, but I cut it out because I want their story, I want their voice to be the main voice. Like too much of interaction, like question answer, it just cuts the flow. So it's, there's that. And of course, they're very uncensored. And that's what I love about them in a way. But also in this modern world, you have to be a little bit political and also edit because names and everything that you don't want. But that's what's interesting is your elders are they've lived such rich life. I mean, when they want to share their experience, and they're longing to share their experience, and when they share it, it's all out there. So they don't care, oh my God, I mean, there are elders who still think about that, and then that's still fine. But mostly they're like, they've passed all that stage, and then they're like past everything, so they're going to share what it is. I mean, that's the best part about it, and they want to share what they've lived and experienced. So it's really fun to listen and talk to them. But at the same time, about celebrities, people who have been on the media, radio, who've been interviewed, just so it may not come out like that, because it's difficult to speak in terms of on the radio or when you feel like someone is interviewing you. So I would say you have to be able to build that trust, that flow, to sort of help them feel like you can say what you want to say about it. So yeah. And there are episodes, like I would really request people to listen, where they share about, oh, in life, this is the first time I'm sharing this secret, like people, there are elders who have shared about that. It's sort of like their place to just be, or just like,
yeah.
So like I remember Miro husband grandmother, she passed away. She lived to like 95 or something. She told me, she was like, when I was 18, all of the men in the village wanted me there. But then
yeah.
but then our Spanish Civil War भयो नि त, so most of the men sort of joined the front, and then she was like, but not, and this is not funny, but she was like, not many came back. He was the only one who came back, so I married him. Type
and that is probably like this Belako scenario, and as when you talk to younger people, they wouldn't say this story the way you just said. Like it's you'll have a lot of words or censorship that you use to show to be or seen certain way, but with elders it's like very organic, natural, very so that's fun.
I really wish like I could also like sign up to my grandparents to Aji's podcast. They're no longer with us, but I wish like that was an opportunity open to. Because can you imagine the stories? I mean,
that's absolutely, like when we started Aji's and even Aji's podcast, one of the main vision was to bring elders in the forefront, in the sense that elders are seen as a dependent group across the world, also very much in Nepal. Like, company or like they don't know, or their ideas, stories, or skills are outdated, or we have just no time for them. So they're like very sidelined. So the idea was to empower them, also to make the other people see them, like the value of their work, the importance of their experiences, and like you said, I think we have through Aji's in some ways been able to generate that awareness, now when young people come to us and say, like you said, like, oh, would love to have my grandmother or grandfather as part of this, so part of the podcast, it's a sense of realization in themselves and the importance, and also how elders are able to be more valued in the family, in the society, because what they want actually is to be heard and seen and be useful in the society, not like I'm going to after this time. No, that's not they want. They want to be helpful. They want to be seen, heard. They want to be there in the society as an active member. Like there were cases in us also, including my own grandmother actually, who was like, like they want to do it, but they're scared. Society like, oh my God, yo umer ma aera maile aba yesto gareera kamaera khanu paryo bhane yesto all the taboos, but they want to. It's not like they don't want. Some people say, "Mero bechdiyo," but malai anonymous haldiyo. And we sort of try to talk to them and say, no, this is why. Like we sort of try to help them and feel like it's it's important for them to be seen, not just for money or because anonymous, like society like they need, some people also still feel that because they feel society don't value them or see them in a negative way if they're engaged in things they like to do or share about things they like to talk about.
Yeah.
After every episode, I know it's not necessarily I'm there in front of them, but we make sure that we send the episodes as soon as it's released to whoever contacted us, the kids or grandkid, and we may really make sure that they make them listen. And some people share the video of the reaction or the photo, or I'm sorry to say that. And then some people, we talk to them on the phone. I talk to them on the phone as much as possible. How did you feel? Did you like the episode? Because it's important for me to know that they are happy about the episode. Like they are happy that's out there. And I have to tell you, everybody is so happy to listen to their voices, I know, and they call us, and then people who know them start calling them, like, oh my God, listen to your story. Exactly. I didn't know about you. I didn't know this about you. Wow. And they become the little celebrities, or the sense of like attention that they deserve. They're so happy. Some of them say like call back and say thank you so much. So it's a really beautiful feeling to be able to know that they enjoyed the episode. And actually Exana Azurama, so she's also one of the makers in Aji's, and she episode, I think Nepal Bhasama, so she got married when she was 8, all these stories, but she also talks about how she made her first earning through Aji's Bajai, like at the age of 83. अनि अब त उहाँलाई पसलमा जाँदाखेरि पनि तपाईको मैले सुनेको थिएँ, I heard your story यताउता भन्दाखेरि she feels shy but at the same time very proud जस्तो. Oh my God, of course, yes. And this is one thing that makes you feel like, okay, we're doing something good in a little small way. And they write to us and say, like Itisha said, like many of them say, I wish I had, but like everything is time bound, right? Like it goes if you don't make use of it, or if you don't value it at the time. Grandmother she's passed on, but I feel like if I had this idea before, I would have interviewed her. She had such great stories. So, but it's past now. I cannot do it anymore. But now there's so many other people who've realized, oh, I need to start listening to them, and I want their story to be on Aji's banner. And that's how they come to us. It may not be thousands or millions of people who are doing that through Aji's. I mean, after listening to Aji's or like being part of Aji's journey, but even the one person or the few people who've done that, knowing or unknowing, I think it's significant, and it's so important. And so each episode, if you go to our website in the podcast, Aji's Products, AJISproducts.org, there's a podcast page. So each episode, we make sure that there's a very nice picture of the person, the speaker. And at the same time, we work with the families to collect their old pictures that go along with the podcast story. So it's like black and white pictures, or so it's also, like you said, the history collection. So it's and that involves a lot of work because they have to dig into everything and then ask the elders, like each and every photo, like
that's so amazing.
It's like you're like each step already has a new story happening, and so whatever comes at the end, the audio product is really just like the culmination of all of these stories that have taken place during the process of making that happen. So that's an amazing way of approaching story ideas also. No? If you think about it.
Usually, just for like our larger like podcasting audience of people who might be interested in podcasting, about Aji's ko iti bhanale, you guys are pretty clear. You guys have like same kind of themes, and you don't go beyond the stories of elderly. So how do you keep the content fresh, or as podcast as creator yourself, to be constantly like excited, motivated by what you are doing in terms of like you sort of like different stories. The एउटै किसिमको format छ, एउटै किसिमको sort of like template in many ways छ नि त for each episode. So त्यस्तो हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ how do you continue producing these episodes, work on the podcast, get excited by it, हैन?
So two things. One is fortunately, because we work with different elders, each story is different, unique in its own way, and it sort of inspires. Each and every story through repetition because through zamanama there is so many experience. Each and every story is unique, it's extraordinary, inspiring. So that keeps you motivated, even if like the format is same, but you're talking to different people, talking to people from different background, language, and so all the other factors are different every time, because they're, like I said, because they're not celebrities, it also is a process with each and every one of them to be able to extract or be able to make them feel comfortable through process. And second, we also try to we have some episodes, especially in the pandemic where we have combined like many elders together, where we asked the kids and grandkids to interview their parents and grandparents, because we weren't able to do it, and we compiled them together. And that's Nepali, where different elders have talked about their experiences of COVID and interviewed by different kids and grandkids across Nepal. So yeah, a format difference, but I don't think at the end, I don't think it matters if the format is the same. Like you can't be having different format for different episodes. That's going to be a lot of work, unless you have like a big team and big. But I think what we need to understand is why you are doing this. Why is it important to you and for this, like society in our case, and for the people? Because for us, the guest is the main person. We want guest stories to be heard across the world, like everybody to understand and seek some inspiration, seek some knowledge or whatever they can get positive. So just focusing and knowing what you're doing is important is a great motivation.
Okay.
So please do check it out.
Please do check it out, and it's also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, and everywhere that podcast can ever be. I know. So please check it out. Please follow us, and please become our patron and support us. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And all of the work, just to sort of say, like, everything you're doing this out of your own time, out of your own like pocket, and all of this work that goes into producing one episode. Like, if anyone listens to Aji's, or if you've come to know about Aji's today, please listen to their work, their podcast, have a look at their website, and support them. And can you make sure that we are also featured in Aji's podcast when we become actual Boju?
Of course, yes, definitely. Bojubajai ta hunai paryo ni.
हामी साच्चै बोजु भएर Aji's podcast मा आयो भने can't get more better than that.
Yeah. I'd love to, we could also explore how we could do something together in the coming days.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Cool. I think that's it. Thank you so much for waking up so early.
You can go back to sleep.
I'm too excited now. I can't.
That was such a wonderful conversation. Like, I really enjoyed that, and I hope like everyone who joined us today, you also enjoyed that conversation. Thank you for joining in as well, everyone who registered and joined. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Lorina.
And thank you, Lorina from Aji's.
Bye, everyone.
Talk to you.
Have a nice day.